The Arctic is experiencing faster melting.
Al Gore told us that the world was changing in 2006. We may be more aware today, but we did not fully heed his message. Since then, CO2 levels have crossed the threshold scientists marked as the danger zone for climate change. Global temperatures have increased. Greenland alone has lost more than 3 trillion tons of land ice, and Arctic sea ice is shrinking at a rate of about 13% per decade. Storms, floods, and droughts have become more extreme, giving us a taste of Mother Nature's unpredictability and power. But we've also learned to leverage that power for good. Renewable energies like wind and solar have grown exponentially, accounting for about a quarter of all electricity generation around the world. 1997's Kyoto Protocol only relied on developed countries, but 2015's Paris Agreement brought together the developed and developing world. With 175 parties committing to limit the increase in global temperature and to get to net zero emissions in the second half of this century.
Mr. Vice President, very nice to have this chance to chat with you.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you.
I saw the film not too long ago.
Great, thank
you. And there was one line that really stuck out to me, and that was where you said that there were times where you looked at the way things are and saw it as a personal failure. Why did you feel that way?
Well, because a long time ago I dedicated myself to trying to mobilize the solutions to the climate crisis, and when I realized that the large carbon polluters were taking the playbook of the tobacco companies and spending a lot of money to confuse people and create false doubts, I worried that that was going to slow us down a lot. But since then, we have broken through. Mother Nature's joined the debate, and all these extreme events related to climate have really awakened a lot of people. And in the last decade, there's been another big change. The solutions are here now, and they're affordable, and they're spreading rapidly, and I'm convinced we're going to win this, and I'm filled with hope about it.
Some of the fiercest opposition to the fight against climate change comes from within your own country, and from the highest level of government at that. How does that make you feel?
Well, when Donald Trump made his speech pulling out of Paris, I was concerned that other countries might use it as an excuse to also pull out.
Well, you tried to convince him, not...
I tried hard to convince him. I went to see him after the election and continued conversations with him after he was in the White House, and I thought there was a chance that he would come to his senses, but I was wrong. But I was very gratified after he made his speech on Paris, when the whole rest of the world redoubled its commitment to to support the Paris Agreement, almost as if the world was saying, well, we'll show you, Donald Trump. And then in my country, the governors and mayors and business leaders stepped up to say, we're still in the Paris Agreement, and we're going to fill the gap, and we're going to meet our commitments regardless of Donald Trump.
What are you saying, that ultimately it wasn't a big deal that the U.S. pulled out?
No, we need to move faster still, and we could move faster with the right kind of leadership from the president, but we don't have it. And the next several months are going to be challenging for my country as this drama unfolds, but we're going to work around him. You know, the first date he could legally even pull out of Paris is the day after the next U.S. presidential election in 2020. And a new president, which I hope we'll have then, if not before, can rejoin the Paris Agreement with 30 days notice. So we're going to win this.
So I hear what you're saying, that you're going to try to work around President Trump. Does that mean you're not going to try to persuade him any longer? That fight's done.
I personally am not going to waste any more time on him. He surrounded himself with a rogues gallery of deniers. He has some good people around him, but they lost the debate. But in spite of Donald Trump, the U.S. is moving forward anyway. And one reason is the price of electricity from solar and wind has dropped so fast. It's really amazing. In many parts of North America and around the world, it's now cheaper than electricity from fossil fuels, and soon it will be cheaper everywhere. And now the batteries to store it overnight are coming way down in price, and that's going to change everything.
And you've seen communities, entire communities, go renewable.
Yeah, one exciting part of the movie is Georgetown, Texas, in the heart of oil country. Trump signs everywhere there, a conservative Republican mayor who happens to be a CPA, so he did the numbers. And he switched his whole city over to 100% renewable energy. They're saving money, the air's cleaner, they're sold on it. No politics, no ideology, just makes good common sense.
Let me take you north of the border. Let's talk about Canada.
Yeah.
How do you feel about where Canada is in relation to the fight against climate change?
For me, Justin Trudeau has been such a breath of fresh air, and Canadians should know that he and his team were absolutely instrumental in helping us get the Paris Agreement. He was terrific there, and I've admired and been inspired by his speeches and his leadership. I don't agree with everything he's doing. We're in a transition period, I get that, but it's really a breath of fresh air, and all around the world he is seen as a new, young, inspiring face of Canada.
And let's talk about the things on which you might not agree, because I see both sides, right? On the one hand, we have a prime minister who is seen as being quite a vocal advocate for the environment. On the other hand, he's signing off on oil pipelines. I mean, I'm a BC boy. The Kinder Morgan pipeline is a big deal where I am.
Yeah, and just today, more Canadian troops had to be sent to BC to help fight the fires there. We have more than 40 huge fires raging in the United States today. The consequences of the climate crisis should wake everybody up to this. And as I said earlier, it is a time of transition. And we face the same challenge in the US. Even some of our governors who are helping to solve the climate crisis face the political pressures on fossil fuels. That's changing, and now some of the policies that are being put in place are going to equalize the playing field for fossil fuels versus renewable energy, and I think that over time this transition is going to go in the right direction.
Another thing that's striking about the film was the absolute sense of devastation that you came across time and time again. Yeah. When I talk to you, you come across as a guy with a lot of hope. But when you're in the Philippines and you're talking to someone who's just been through the ravages of Typhoon Haiyan, do you feel the despair? Do you feel despair from within when you look at the broader fight ahead?
Well, I think the tragedies that are all too commonplace now should be a wake-up call. And I think the voices of those who have personally gone through these experiences are really important for the world to hear. And I think they need to result in our enhanced resolve to protect those in the future who would otherwise be subject to the same kinds of tragedies. So anybody who deals with the climate crisis has a struggle between hope and despair, candidly. But for me, it's always been easy to come down on the side of hope because of all the dramatic positive changes that are taking place. An economist once said, things take longer to happen than you think they will, and then they happen much faster than you thought they could. That pattern's holding true with solar and wind and other renewable technologies. It's also evident politically. This climate movement is in the tradition of all the great moral causes in human history. They all face opposition until they're boiled down to a choice between what's right and what's wrong. And that's the tipping point we're at right now for the climate movement.
You've never thought of giving up?
Oh no. Couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, won't.
But I mean, and the reason I ask that is because I think back to 2006 when An Inconvenient Truth was seen by the world.
Yeah.
Your harshest critics, they called you a sham, a fraud, a fanatic. How did you deal with that? That didn't give you pause to think, gosh, this is an uphill battle, the likes of which a lot of people don't climb.
Well, the climate polluters, for them, the truth about the climate crisis is still inconvenient. And there is a long tradition of people who dislike a message wanting to attack the messenger. And during my previous lifetime in politics, I developed a pretty thick skin. And when you're doing what you know is right, when the cause you're supporting is as important as this one is, criticism doesn't matter. And then, you know, another big change in the last 10 years is that some of those criticisms you referred to revealed to be dead wrong. For example, the single most criticized scene in the first movie was an animated sequence showing that the 9/11 Ground Zero memorial site would be flooded by ocean water with the combination of sea level rise and storm surges. Well, when Superstorm Sandy hit, the ocean water poured into that site many years before the scientists predicted that it would. Last year was the hottest year ever measured. Second hottest was the year before. Third hottest the year before that. The pattern is so clear now that people are seeing through this intentional campaign by the climate deniers.
But let me ask you this. Is it frustrating that the battle lines consistently seem to get redrawn year after year? I mean, if you're not convincing people that climate change is real, you're convincing people of the degree to which it is real. Or beyond that, you're trying to convince people of the urgency with which they need to respond to the crisis. I mean, where does it end?
Well, it ends with a victory for humanity. It ends with a realization that this is the biggest challenge we face and we've got to step up to it. That's happening now. There's a history to all this. You know, when the scientists came up with the firm linkage between cigarettes and lung cancer, the tobacco companies hired actors and dressed them up as doctors and put them in front of cameras to say falsely to people there are no health risks to smoking cigarettes. And 100 million people died. The climate the polluters, the carbon polluters, have taken the playbook from the tobacco industry. They've hired the same PR firms even. It's all been documented. And it's deeply unethical. But people are seeing through it, partly because there's a new participant in the discussion, Mother Nature, and her voice turns out to be the most persuasive of all.
I can see quite clearly you're convinced that this is a winnable fight. My question would be, is it winnable in time?
That's the right question. You're dead on. Some changes, regrettably, have already occurred. Big parts of West Antarctica are probably past the point of no return. But we still have time to affect the pace of that change, and we still have time to prevent other parts of Antarctica and Greenland from raising sea levels so high that lots of coastal cities will have to be abandoned. We still have time, in other words, to prevent the most catastrophic changes. But time is a-wasting. We're putting another 110 million tons of global warming pollution into the sky every day as if it's an open sewer. Emissions have leveled off 3 years in a row, declining in North America and in China, and soon will start declining everywhere. So it is a race against time. And that's why I'm hoping that people will go see this movie. I encourage people to use their voices, win the conversations about climate. Use your votes and your political participation. Use your choices in life. Choose the climate-friendly products. Send a signal to business that they need to be a part of the solution, as many of them have decided to do.
There is one other thing that I'd be remiss not to ask you about, and that is 2020, a run for political office, the presidency. Is that in the cards?
I'm a recovering politician. The longer I go without a relapse, the less likely one becomes.
That's not an answer to the question, though.
It's my answer to the question.
Well, you're not ruling it out?
Well, I'm avoiding a relapse.
Mr. Vice President, it's
Thank
been a
you
pleasure
very
to chat
much.
with
You bet.